Ever get that feeling? You know that feeling where you've just barely scratched the surface of something really mysterious?
Oh, yeah, like you know there's something more there.
Exactly. Well, we are going to take that feeling and jump headfirst into a podcast that is all about real-life mysteries.
Ooh, fun.
It's called Vile Vision.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and it's not about, like, ghosts and the paranormal and all that stuff.
Oh, so just like straight up true crime and stuff.
Yeah, basically. But even broader than that,
Yeah.
we're going to look at online puzzles and missing people and murders and all sorts of things.
Wow, that's a lot of ground to cover.
Definitely. And the first stop on our deep dive is the Puzzle of 3301. Have you heard of this one?
I think so, but refresh my memory.
Okay, so it all started online, like a challenge, basically.
What?
It was this cryptic message, and people had to solve all these puzzles.
Like an escape room, but online.
Kind of, but way more intense. And this is the crazy part. It wasn't just online.
What do you mean?
The clues led to physical locations all over the world.
Like all over.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, people were deciphering these clues and then flying to places like Hawaii and Spain and Korea.
Really? No way. So you could solve a puzzle online, and then the next thing you know, you're standing in front of some, like, hidden symbol carved into a statue in Rome.
Exactly. And nobody knows who's behind the whole thing.
It's got to be some super secret organization, right?
That's what a lot of people think. Some say it's got to be like the CIA or MI6 using it as a way to recruit people.
Or like some secret society testing people's skills.
Right. And here's another crazy thing. The people who actually solved the puzzle, they've never, like, come forward publicly.
Whoa, that's wild. So we don't even know if they're okay.
Exactly. It's like, what happens to those who crack the code?
I know, right? Like, are they sworn to secrecy, or do they disappear into some, like, underground world of super geniuses?
Chilling, right.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Okay, so speaking of the digital world and things that are kind of scary, let's move on to a case that you might remember from a few years back, the iCloud nightmare.
Oh, yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah, back in 2014, a bunch of celebrities had their private photos leaked online.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like a little leak. It was a ton of people, right?
Oh, yeah, a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a celebrity gossip story either.
Right. It kind of showed everybody how vulnerable we all are online.
For sure. I mean, if people like Jennifer Lawrence and Scarlett Johansson can get hacked, then what hope do the rest of us have, right?
Yeah, it's kind of unsettling, and the FBI investigated and everything.
Really?
Uh-huh. But they never figured out who did it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it really makes you think, about how anonymous the internet is and how hard it can be to find people who are really good at covering their tracks.
Okay, well, let's switch gears again and go from the digital world to Mexico for a case that is really, really tragic.
Okay.
It's called the Missing 43.
Okay.
Back in 2014, a whole bus full of students disappeared.
A whole bus?
Yeah, it's after they had some kind of confrontation with the police.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the whole thing is super messed up. There are all these accusations about corruption and police brutality, and people think this powerful drug cartel might have been involved.
Cartel, wow.
Yeah, and the official story is that the students were handed over to the cartel and murdered, but they never found the bodies.
That's horrible.
It's so sad, and nobody knows for sure what happened, and the families are still looking for answers.
And you said something about the mayor and his wife being involved?
Yeah, some people think they were part of a cover-up to protect the police and the cartel.
Wow. So it's like, who can you even trust when the people in charge might be criminals themselves?
Right, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so get ready for a real head-scratcher now. The Unsolvable Code. This one goes back to 1999 when they found this guy named Ricky McCormick dead in a field in Missouri.
Okay.
But the mystery is they found these 2 handwritten notes in his pockets full of weird symbols.
Like a code.
Yeah, and get this. McCormick himself could barely read and write.
What? So how did he write a code?
I know, right? It's crazy. And the FBI has been trying to crack the code for decades, but they haven't been able to figure it out.
So wait, if McCormick could barely write, how could he create a code that nobody can break?
Right. It doesn't make sense. Some experts think maybe it's some kind of like folk cryptography, like a code system that people outside the world of professional code breaking use.
Oh, okay. I guess that's possible. But it's still so weird.
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, what if those notes have important information about how McCormick died? What if they're the key to solving his murder,
Yeah.
but nobody can understand them?
It's a creepy thought.
Yeah, definitely.
So this next case from Vile Vision, it's like seriously disturbing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's called the Highway of Tears.
Okay, I've heard that name before, but I don't remember the details.
So it's this stretch of highway in Canada, in British Columbia, and it's really isolated and desolate.
Okay.
And since like 1969, at least 18 women have disappeared or been found murdered along this highway.
18. That's awful.
It's crazy, right? And some people think that the real number could be way higher, like maybe even closer to 50.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
And it's so hard to investigate because it's such a huge area and the terrain is really difficult.
Yeah, you're right. It's just so remote. It's like if something happened out there, who would even know?
Right. And that's what's so scary about it. The families of these women, they have no answers. They don't know what happened to their loved ones.
And it's been going on for so long, like decades, with so many cases unsolved.
It's heartbreaking. And this case brings up a lot of issues about how Indigenous communities are treated and how their cases are often overlooked.
You mean like there's a bias against them?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but it definitely makes you wonder if these cases would have gotten more attention if the victims weren't Indigenous women.
That's a really good point. And it makes you think about how many other cases like this might be out there, cases that haven't gotten the attention they deserve because of who the victims are.
Exactly. And it's something that we really need to pay attention to and work to change.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about a different kind of mystery, the kind that plays out entirely in the digital world.
Okay.
We were talking about the iCloud nightmare earlier,
Yeah.
with the celebrity photos.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I was thinking about how it really highlighted the dangers of living so much of our lives online.
Definitely. I mean, we put so much of our personal information out there and we trust these companies to keep it safe, but sometimes they can't.
Right. Like, how do we know that our data is really secure? I mean, if someone can hack into iCloud and steal photos from celebrities who have all sorts of security measures in place, then what about the rest of us?
Yeah, and the thing is that a lot of times we don't even know when our data has been compromised until it's too late.
It's like we're living in this digital world where anything can happen and we have no control over it.
And it's only going to get more complicated as technology keeps advancing.
Okay, well, let's go back to the real world for a minute and talk about a mystery that's been puzzling people for decades, the Unsolvable Code.
Oh, yeah, the one's a classic.
I just can't wrap my head around how someone who could barely read and write could create a code that nobody can break.
I know, it's wild, right? It makes you wonder if we really understand the human mind at all.
Right. Like, what if there are different ways of thinking, different kinds of intelligence that we just haven't figured out how to measure yet?
Yeah, what if McCormick had some kind of, hidden genius that we just don't have the tools to recognize?
And what if that code holds the key to solving his murder? It's a chilling thought.
Definitely.
Okay, so before we move on from vile vision, let's circle back to the first case we talked about, the puzzle of 3301.
Okay.
I just find it so fascinating that nobody knows who was behind it or what their purpose was.
Right. Like, were they just messing with people or was there something more to it?
And the fact that the people who solved the puzzle have never come forward publicly just makes it even more mysterious.
Yeah. It's like they disappeared into thin air.
Yeah.
What if they stumbled onto something really dangerous?
Or what if they were recruited into some secret organization?
Ooh, that would be crazy.
Right. It's like the ultimate cliffhanger.
Totally. We're left with all these questions and no answers.
And that's part of what makes these unsolved mysteries so intriguing, right? They make us think and they make us wonder.
For sure. They definitely keep things interesting.
Okay, so we've been talking about all these unsolved mysteries from Vile Vision, and I don't know about you, but it just makes me think about how much we don't know. Like all these unanswered questions and how vulnerable we are, whether it's online or out in the real world.
I totally agree. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, and like the Highway of Tears, that case really gets to me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's just so sad, and it makes me think about how sometimes, even in countries like Canada, there are these dark places where bad things happen and nobody seems to care.
Yeah, especially when the victims are from marginalized communities like Indigenous women.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if those cases would have been solved if the victims were, white and middle class.
It's a tough question, but it's definitely something we need to think about and talk about more.
Okay, so we've talked about real-world danger, and then we talked about digital dangers. And I think it's important to remember that both of those things are connected.
Yeah.
Like what happens online can affect our real lives and vice versa.
Oh, absolutely. Like with the iCloud nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. That whole thing was a mess, and it really showed how vulnerable we all are when we put our information online.
And how hard it is to track down hackers who know how to cover their tracks.
Right, that's like they could just disappear into the digital ether.
And they could be anywhere in the world.
Okay, well, let's switch gears one more time and go back to the Unsolvable Code.
Okay.
That case just blows my mind.
I know, right?
I mean, how can someone who can barely write create a code that nobody can break?
It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah, it's like, what if Ricky McCormick had some kind of hidden genius that we just don't understand? What if he saw the world in a way that most of us just can't even imagine?
That's a really interesting thought.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if there are other people out there like him, people with these incredible abilities that we just don't recognize.
Maybe we're all just walking around with these hidden talents that we don't even know we have.
And maybe someday someone will crack that code and we'll finally know what secrets Ricky McCormick was hiding.
I hope so. That would be amazing.
Okay, so we've talked about the Highway of Tears and the iCloud Nightmare and the Unsolvable Code, but we have to go back to where we started.
You mean the puzzle of 3301?
You know it. That case is just so mind-boggling, and I love that we still don't know who was behind it or what their purpose was.
It's like a real-life conspiracy theory.
Totally, and the fact that the people who solved the puzzle have never come forward publicly just makes it even more intriguing.
It's like they entered this secret world that the rest of us don't even know exists.
What if they're out there right now using their skills for good, or maybe even for evil?
Who knows? That's the beauty of it.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of unsolved mysteries.
Yeah, that was a wild ride.
Thanks for joining me on this journey. It's been fun exploring these cases with you.
Anytime. I'm always up for a good mystery.
And for all of you listening out there, remember, the world is full of unanswered questions. So keep your minds curious, keep those imaginations open, and never stop exploring the unknown, because you never know what you might find.
That's good advice.